However, this is the first time UNESCO New Delhi has introduced this format of South Asian Open Talks in India. Our partner for today's event is Go News. The event's proposed theme is Leaving No One Behind, promoting the right to information, multilingualism in cyberspace, and local content development. To inaugurate the program, I would like to invite onto the stage Mr. Hezekiel Dalamini, Advisor for Communication Information for South Asia, UNESCO New Delhi, to deliver the welcome address.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. UNESCO is honored to partner with Go News and other stakeholders in organizing the first Open Talks to commemorate this year's International Day for Universal Access to Information. I also wish to express our thanks and gratitude to our distinguished guests and speakers from Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Maldives, and Sri Lanka. Your presence here qualifies these talks as a truly regional event. Universal access to information is a fundamental human right that plays a pivotal role in empowering citizens, facilitating fair debate, and giving equal opportunities to all. It is a driving force for transparent, accountable, and effective governance, and paves the way for freedom of expression, cultural and linguistic diversity, and participation in public life. The 2019 Global Talks global theme, Leaving No One Behind, and our events theme, Promoting the Right to Information, Multilingualism in Cyberspace, and Local Content Development are relevant to the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, particularly to SDG 2, as already said, on investment in rural infrastructure and technology development, and SDG 16 on the adoption and implementation of constitutional, statutory, and policy guarantees for public access to information. UNESCO has been designated by the United Nations as the lead agency for observing the year 2019 as the International Year of Indigenous Languages. Organizing the Open Talks on the chosen theme is intended to demonstrate the inherent synergies between the observance of the International Day for Universal Access to Information this year and the International Year for Indigenous Languages. UNESCO has supported capacity development, awareness raising, and policy advocacy with respect to the right to information in South Asian countries such as Bangladesh, India, and Sri Lanka. Moreover, in keeping with the action plan for the International Year for Indigenous Languages, UNESCO has already begun to build and leverage multi-stakeholder partnerships to encourage leadership with respect to language preservation, access to information and knowledge in local languages, and the promotion of multilingualism in cyberspace. Access to information is rarely equitable. It is critical to ensure that the digital dividend reaches traditionally disadvantaged groups, including women. Considerations of gender must be integrated into the design of new information services, technologies, and products, and the rollout of these ICTs too must be truly inclusive. In an effort to address the digital gender gap and the fundamental barriers to women's uptake of technology, Target 5C of the SDGs on gender equality urges stakeholders to enhance the use of enhance the use of enabling technology, in particular ICT, to promote the empowerment of women. In times of growing disinformation and hate speech, the right to access information in the public interest is more important than ever. On this day, therefore, let us advance this right that is essential to our progress in sustainable development. Thank you.
Thank you for your address, Ms. Dalamni. We had hoped to have Ms. TCA Kalyani, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, with us for the inaugural session, but she's unable to join us because of other commitments at the ministry. But we do hope that she'll be able to make it slightly later this morning. I would now like to invite our guest speaker for the day, Ms. Suhavni Singh, social media strategist and founder of India Cultural Hub, to tell you how she uses social media to not just to provide access to information, but also to change lives and make an impact.
A very good morning to everybody here. A simple question I'll start with. How many of you are on Facebook today? Hands up. How many of you are on Instagram today? Okay, good to know. So I basically run India Cultural Hub. It's a social media community which started off on Facebook and transformed into an Instagram community, which is reaching out to about 2 lakh people today. In 2004, the world around us changed. Mark Zuckerberg started Facebook. In 2010, Instagram came into being. The world around us got even more connected. In social media today, people have a choice to consume what information they want. Earlier, they didn't have access to such information. Today, all of us are more informed and we can consciously choose what information we want to see. What does India Cultural Hub stand for? ICH stands for an open space, unfiltered conversations, local content development, and multilingualism. Through India Cultural Hub, we connect to everybody around us today. You don't have to be from a particular race or gender. It's actually what somebody, you and I, from every country, every city can relate to. In fact, if you see our logo, it's a mixture of Hindi and English, and this is what I came up with about 5 years ago. So what does India Cultural Hub essentially do? We give a voice to the new generation. We give a voice to you. Our content mainly focuses on travel, history, monuments, artworks, issues of social injustice, and we kind of pick up on those topics and create relevant content that would engage to you and I. We've spoken about stories from Maldives and Bangladesh. We've spoken about stories from rural villages in India to kind of making fun content which you would actually want to just have a look at and smile at the end of the day. Random acts of kindness. I'll speak slowly about the impact we've kind of created and the actions people have taken through actually following our content. Through my experience, social media has changed the way we all consume information today. We share information, give access to information on the go. Through this, audience like you and I find the content relatable, engaging, and wanting to share instantly. How I started. How many of you are aware of an organization called SPICMAKE? Hands up. Okay, so SPICMAKE is an organization that promotes traditional arts and crafts across India. It's mainly a physical organization with offline presence. When I was in school and college, I was heading this, and what I realized is that the events and workshops I did, the rooms were empty just because people had this whole idea that Indian culture is too traditional, it's boring, and the youth was getting westernized. At the same time, social media was picking up in India. Facebook had just started, and I was like, I wanted to mirror this whole gap between offline and online presence on social media. So I started a Facebook community with just sharing my personal experiences, as I've always been passionate about documenting wherever I travel to and visit to. And instantly, people related with my content, and we had about 10,000 people join in overnight. Throughout the next week, I saw numbers rising to 20,000. And at that time, social media was a very new field. Not many people knew about it. So I realized the immense scope of the impact we can create through making communities like this. Of course, later on, Instagram picked up. So the power of social media, like I said, has impact. How have we created impact? Let's pick up topics like gender. Here is a story of the Indian women football team's ex-goalkeeper. Is this familiar to anybody? Exactly the answer to what we are here for today. In fact, we shared this post on India Cultural Hub when India lost the World Cup recently. When the entire emotional connect of the country was towards losing, this is a lady over here who doesn't have money to survive with her family today. So I think the timing of the post when we shared this connected so deeply with the people that in about 1 hour, we had about 9,000 people sharing this post. And overnight, we had about 150 sports NGOs come to us and create donations for her to survive. I'll talk about the story and how we shared it and how it actually creates an emotional appeal to people. 8 years ago, I was the goalkeeper of India's women's football team. What? Yes, you heard right. My husband is also a daily laborer, and unless both of us work, it is difficult to feed our 2 kids. She was also appointed as a police home guard by the local police for a few years, but it was very difficult for her to sustain her family at that income. A former district collector had helped her get a job for training students, but they promised her a fee of rupees 8,000, and she only got 3,000 at the end of the month. This is the state of our Indian women's football team's ex-goalkeeper. And I feel like if we hadn't shared such a post, she would probably be still living in the same space as she was on that day. We go on to this story of a transgender auto driver in Mumbai. Is this familiar to anybody? Okay. Would you want to tell me a little more about what you know? Okay, so basically, this story of ours, in fact, got so viral that we had the most famous personalities of India sharing this in probably half an hour sharing the story. So happy to meet this gracious auto wali from Bombay. When I first noticed the painted nails, I thought this man must have gone to a temple to pray and made a mannat with God. So I casually asked, why did you have such long nails? Then I hear a sweet, humble voice. Didi, Eid ki tayari kar rahi hoon. Me, with a huge smile on my face, started to chat up with her. Her name is Manju and she lives with her boyfriend. She was working in a hotel but was fired because of sexual preference. Hence, decided to ride an auto for a living since the past 5 years. She dreads to ride an auto after 11 p.m. because she mostly used to get beaten up by the police. So when I shared this story, I think the outpour of response that I got was immense. And basically, access to information becomes a driver to diminish gender inequalities and enable their equal role in societies as active citizens. Let's take the example of education. Has anybody heard of Mr. Sharma, who runs a free school for 200 unprivileged kids in under a flyover in East Delhi? Yes. So here's a man who basically had a regular job and quit his job to teach 200 children under a free school under a flyover in East Delhi. I just came across him while I was working with an NGO in East Delhi, and I decided to share his story on India Cultural Hub. Besides the people who wanted to donate money, it actually reached a Swiss filmmaker who followed India Cultural Hub, who actually came down, gathered funds, and made a documentary on him. And now he's been able to open about 3 more schools in the same area to eradicate poverty and educate the future generations. So I feel like the kind of content I've shared to India Cultural Hub is relatable, it's organic, something which you and I would like to share on the go. We don't need any funds, like since all of us have phones today. It's about what you see, what you really see. You don't really need any fancy equipment, you don't need a video camera, we all have phone cameras, and that's how we started sharing, and the impact, as you can see, has been amazing. Some more examples of random acts of kindness which actually touched a chord to a lot of people. How many of us go to Khan Market on a regular basis for anything, a bookshop, a coffee? Hands up. Have you all noticed these well-fed dogs on the roads over there? And I always wondered, why are they so fat? They're street dogs. So I suddenly came across this lady who I've been noticing for a while since I'm a regular over there. And I always saw her feeding the dogs over there. One day I just stopped and spoke to her, and I realized that she basically lives in Nizamuddin and has a family of 6 people, but even then she carries 9 kgs of rice on a daily basis to feed the dogs. And these are stories which haven't been shared. I think India Cultural Hub gives a voice to the minorities, something which hasn't reached the mainstream media in the past. And we've actually impacted lives like that. Another example is artworks which we share on issues of social injustice. So a Canadian artist got in touch with us who basically focused on presenting dowry in her own way. So something like this also is something you and I would like to tap on and increase awareness on social issues. Recently, the Tourism Ministry has launched a campaign to basically illuminate all kinds of monuments across Delhi. How many of us are aware of this? Okay, most of us are. When it recently started, when we had a meeting with the government, and we realized that even though it's been spoken about in mainstream media, the numbers which they expected to actually visit these monuments was nil. Hardly about 7 to 8 people were actually visiting these monuments in the timings which were extended. Once we started posting the kind of shares and responses, people actually thought like this picture would excite you, you would want to go there. And the government actually saw an increase in the amount of people going to all these monuments. And finally, this picture. The impact of a picture like this basically would relate to a lot of women who are traveling in local trains across India. We're all used to the unsafe looks we get from a lot of men. And while we shared this picture, it kind of opened up a lot of engaging conversation. And that's another way in how we engage our community to talk about issues which haven't been spoken about. Unfiltered conversations. You and I, we would come to India Cultural Hub to speak about issues we wouldn't go anywhere else. And finally, finally, interesting monuments you would want to travel to. The history behind them is dying. People don't really know about, do you know facts, why you would actually want to go to these monuments. So that's another theme we cover and speak about and engage the youth today. So I believe that social media tools can be used to spread the right word about certain issues, as well as human rights issues that empower people with the knowledge to bring change. For most of the youth today, social media is the only touch point for a lot of information that we can actually understand and gather. I believe that our generation will define the future like every generation before has strived to do so. And social media platforms like India Cultural Hub will be catalysts in doing so. We're lucky to be a part of such a connected generation. Let's get together and make some change. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Singh, for sharing your thoughts with us. Moving forward, we will now play the curtain raiser for the event by Go News.
के लिए बेहद महत्वपूर्ण है, लेकिन ऐसा होता नहीं। बेहद कम लोग होते हैं जिनके लिए सभी सूचनाएं आसानी से मुहैया हो जाती हैं। यूनेस्को इस खाई को पाटने में लगा हुआ है, जो हर साल यूनिवर्सल एक्सेस टू इंफॉर्मेशन का आयोजन करता है। इस बार यूनेस्को की क्या तैयारियां हैं, हमारे सहयोगी सिद्धार्थ पांडे बता रहे हैं।
हर साल 28 सितंबर को मनाया जाता है एज इंटरनेशनल डे फॉर यूनिवर्सल एक्सेस टू इंफॉर्मेशन, यानी कि जानकारी या सूचना। विश्व भर में प्रोग्राम्स का आयोजन किया जाता है। यूनाइटेड नेशंस एजुकेशनल, साइंटिफिक एंड कल्चरल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन यानी कि यूनेस्को जो है इन प्रोग्राम्स का आयोजन करती है विश्व भर में। और उनका कहना है कि इफ़ इंफॉर्मेशन इज़ पावर देन एक्सेस टू इंफॉर्मेशन इज़ एम्पावरमेंट, यानी कि अगर इंफॉर्मेशन या जानकारी जो है एक तरीके से शक्ति है, तो फिर इंफॉर्मेशन या जानकारी उपलब्ध कराना वो जो है सशक्तिकरण है। ये यूनेस्को का मेन मुख्य प्रयास है कि सब लोगों तक इंफॉर्मेशन के माध्यम पहुंचे, सूचना पहुंचे, और ये बहुत ही ज़रूरी है। हालांकि इंटरनेट जो है विश्व भर में फैल गया है। हिंदुस्तान में भी इंटरनेट काफ़ी फैला हुआ है, ख़ासतौर से मोबाइल के ज़रिए लोगों को इंटरनेट पे जा सकते हैं। लेकिन अब भी जो है काफ़ी असमानता जो हैं वो हैं, चाहे वो ग्रामीण इलाकों और शहरों के बीच में हैं, महिलाओं और पुरुषों के बीच में हैं, बुजुर्ग और नौजवानों के बीच में हैं, और डेवलप्ड और डेवलपिंग नेशंस के बीच में भी जो हैं जो डिफरेंसेस जो हैं इंफॉर्मेशन तक पहुंचने के लिए ये जो हैं अभी भी हैं। और इन डिफरेंसेस को, इन असमानताओं को दूर करना मेन मुख्य प्रयास है यूनेस्को का। और इस साल यूनेस्को ने नई दिल्ली में साउथ एशियन ओपन टॉक्स का आयोजन किया है। इवेंट का मुख्य थीम जो इस बार है वो है लीविंग नो वन बिहाइंड, promoting the right to information, यानी कि किसी को वापस किसी को पीछे नहीं छोड़ना है, सब तक information या सूचना पहुंचाना है। ये मेन मुख्य थीम जो है इस बार की जो ओपन टॉक कॉन्फ्रेंस जो होगी नई दिल्ली में 9 अक्टूबर को, वो इसका मुख्य जो थीम है। गो न्यूज़ जो है वो मीडिया पार्टनर है यूनेस्को के साथ, तो यानी कि पल पल की जानकारी इस पूरे कॉन्फ्रेंस के बारे में क्या क्या मेन निर्णय हुए, क्या क्या फैसले हुए, क्या मेन मुख्य बातचीत हुई, तो इन सब से हम आपको अवगत कराते रहेंगे गो न्यूज़ के ऐप के ज़रिए और हमारे जो वेबसाइट gonewsindia.com या सोशल मीडिया के ज़रिए आप ये सारी जानकारी ले सकते हैं।
This brings us to the
सूचनाओं
end.
तक तेजी से पहुंच होना ना
This brings us to the end of our inaugural session. To anchor and moderate the open talks, I would like to invite my colleague, Mr. Anirban Sarma. It's not good.
Good morning, friends and colleagues. We will now head into the open talks themselves. Our first speaker for the morning is Mr. Pankaj Pachauri, just a moment, let me get this up. Yes, our first speaker for the morning is Mr. Pankaj Pachauri, the founder and editor-in-chief of Go News, the mobile app and web-based news channel. Go News, of course, is also our media partner for today's event. Mr. Pachauri, whom, is of course very well known to a lot of us, is one of India's leading journalists and news anchors and was formerly communications advisor to the Prime Minister's office between 2012 and 2014. Mr. Pachauri's talk will focus, among other things, on how the rise of online news platforms has helped expand access to information while also disrupting the traditional media. We would also like to have your views, sir, on the need for more news content in local languages. Mr. Pachauri, if you would like to come up, please. We just need that mic switched on now. Thank you.
Check.
Good morning, and thank you UNESCO for organizing open talks and right to information and International Day for Universal Access to Information. I stand here today to applaud the work done by small organizations, individuals who have helped India in the last decade or so to become connected. And at the beginning of the session, we were told that universal access to information is a fundamental right. And that's why UNESCO has taken up this issue, which also helps in development of societies, countries, and empowerment of the sections of the society which may have fallen out of the map, as we said. Today, as I stand before you, I've gone through some data, and the government of India in the last about a decade has been pushing through to give information and access to people about their daily lives. If you look at the data .gov.in, it has resources which are about 3,20,000. So it's accessible to people, the resources there. The e-governance has 61 apps, which is from how to get a motor vehicle license, how to get help on starting your own business, and on every human activity possible, your education, your scholarships, your water accessibility, your electricity accessibility, all these issues are there on data.govin or e-governance platforms for the government of India. But unfortunately today, and I want to underline this, 70 million Indians do not have access to all this work being done by the government in Kashmir. So that's a biggest blot, a black spot on universalization of data and information in India. And we have to, from all platforms and all organizations, have to raise our voice that this should go. Why people sitting in Srinagar should not be able to log in and apply for a license for a car? Why should students should not be able to apply for scholarships? Why should an apple grower should not be able to log in into the larger mandis, as we call it, in India and look for the best price for his apples? So this lockdown in Kashmir is now become international issue. We've just had today senators in America raising these issues and the congressmen in America raising this issue, that this is a fundamental right being not provided to Kashmiri people. So that aside, now we come to India and how India has empowered itself due to digital information dissemination. We have 1.2 billion people today who are enrolled under Aadhaar. And outside China, this is the largest mass of human population which is under one identification system. So that's a huge number. Since 2000 to now, in 2019, India has added 360 million people to its population. You can imagine that a child who was 10 years old, and I see many of them here, would be 19 today. And these are the people who are consuming data. But unfortunately, only 267 million people today are on mobile internet. So, and these figures are business figures, they come out in newspapers, and so 267 million people, which is larger than the population of the whole of Europe, is on mobile internet connectivity today in India. But if you look at the imbalance in distribution of mobile internet, then you'll find that 60% of rural women do not get access to phones even today. So that's a big gap we have in our universalization of information attempts. And it's a huge gap. In countries, I'm not even going to Europe and all that, in countries like even Malaysia and Indonesia, the access to information is much more. And that will be possible only when a large section of Indians have enough disposable income to get their hands on internet connectivity through mobile phones or through broadband. And for that, we have to go back and look at some more numbers. India today has a per capita income of $1,800. And the difference in this per capita income, say in a city like Delhi and a state like Bihar, is huge. It's almost about 10 times. If people in Delhi are earning per capita $3,500 or $4,000 a year, the people in Bihar and UP are still getting about $450 to $500. So that's a huge gap. And that gap shows when we talk about that out of 1.2 billion Aadhaar owners, we have only 267 million, not even 25% of that, who are connected through internet. So that's one. So in that term, we did research on Go News, and we are a fact-based agency. We don't have any opinions because we think that India has too many opinions and there are too many people on TikTok, on Facebook, and on Twitter who have opinions. So I think there's an excess of opinion and there is a gap on facts. So we are a fact-based news organization, and we just place facts in front of people. Now, many times people say that the opinion comes from facts. And some facts are good, some facts are bad. As I just said, that the government of India has made huge efforts to reach out to every citizen, but the same government of India has willingly not given that access to 70 million people in Kashmir. So those are the facts. So if we look at India's map, we have Delhi and Haryana and Goa, which have a per capita income of, say, Paraguay or Vietnam or Indonesia. But if we look at Bihar and Odisha and parts of UP, actually the entire eastern UP, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, the per capita income is as bad as Namibia or Laos. So there is this disparity in India which is inbuilt on access of information. And we have to provide people cheaper ways to get this information and wherewithal to get information, because now everything is based on information. People sitting in Delhi have more access to scholarships abroad because they are connected. People sitting in Patna and Motihari, they don't have enough access. I go on a program called Kaun Banega Crorepati, KBC, I'm sure everyone has seen that. And believe you me that more and more during the last 6 years, the participants on Kaun Banega Crorepati are coming for smaller towns and even villages. Because people have now that information that they can go on a program like this and make millions of rupees. Just because they have that access to information. And to apply, to be part of Kaun Banega Crorepati, you have to have a phone. Because that's how you get in touch with people. And as India is getting more and more phones, the participants are coming from smaller and smaller towns and villages, which shows that when it comes to knowledge, when it comes to intellect, all Indians are same. We do not have, those who do not have access were not there until now on platforms, and now they are getting on those platforms. So that's absolutely important. And because of the access to information also, there's another figure I'd like to talk about, and that's the Human Development Index. If you look at India at the Human Development Index, we come somewhere between Namibia and Pakistan. And that is because the development of our, what we call human resources in India has not been very high because they don't have access to information as one part. Then if you have access to information, you have access to capital. If you have access to capital, you have access to skills. If you have access to skills, then you can improve your income. It's all related. So that is another big thing which, which struck me. I'm just going tonight to participate in a conference in Greece. It's called the Rhodes Forum. And I was preparing for that. And the subject there also is this. That is the new world order, is a new world disorder on dialogue. For dialogue with country to country, we need to talk to each other. We need to know about other countries. I just got to know from the lady here who you are going to hear after me, that Maldives, the newspapers are dying. And actually people are getting all their information and news from online platforms. Because I asked her, why in Maldives everyone is on Twitter? And they will be able to hear her. Lot many people in Maldives will be able to hear us, then they will be able to hear me in India, which is much, much, much larger population. So there are two things which I want to underline here. Number one, that the governments should not willingly cut off people from the flow of information, as we are doing. India has a terrible, terrible reputation when it comes to internet shutdowns. We had more than 140 internet shutdowns in last year alone, and we are on top. Secondly, the government is also now increasingly asking tech platforms to take off information. Google has a compliance of about 57% of information being removed on the request of Indian government. India is has the largest requests to Twitter, to Google, to Facebook to take off content from their platforms, which is not a very good thing. We should teach people how to fight fake news. Another thing I'll tell you, which is also totally eye-opening, that among the 15 countries in the world where fake news is a concern, India doesn't figure in those 15 countries. They start from Finland and Norway and even UK and Sweden. The country which has the second largest subscription of internet social media platforms in the world. You pick up Facebook, Twitter, Instagram now, and more TikTok. We are the second largest social media population in the world. And people are not worried about fake news, which is very dangerous. It means people are consuming fake news as real news, and they are not concerned about it. Finland has fought fake news by teaching students as small as in class 3 and 4th, then how to spot fake news. They've done this program and they have actually fought the menace of fake news. And I'd like to really congratulate the government of Kerala, which has started teaching how to spot fake news in primary schools. And that's how we should fight this corruption of information which is on social media. When we were fighting HIV, AIDS, I attended a seminar, I think it was WHO, and the person said that if we cannot snatch phones from our children's hands, or from our students, or from our population, we cannot do that anymore because that's their fundamental right, let's face it. So if you have a swimming pool in your house, you cannot barb wire the swimming pool. If you want your children safe, you teach them how to swim. And that's exactly what we should do with social media. We should teach people that how to distinguish between information which is genuine and which is fake. And that's the only way we are going to fight this menace of fake news. That's another thing. Now, about languages, which is one of the mandates of UNESCO, that information should be multilingual. There's a Hindi saying in India, कोस कोस पे पानी बदले चार कोस पे बानी, which translates into that every 2 miles the language of people or the dialect of people changes, and every 8 miles the taste of the water changes. And that's the diversity of India. You are in Delhi, there's a different kind of taste in the water. You go across Yamuna and you'll find that it becomes more alkaline and there's more salt in the water. You come from Amity, you would know that. So in a country like that, with such diversity, where there are 18 languages, I think 18, now it must be more, I haven't, 22. 18 are on our currency notes. You can imagine. Because the currency note, if you start putting in all other languages, it will be full of just languages and there will be no place for Gandhiji's picture. So in a country like India, we cannot have senior leaders who are in power talking about one nation, one language. No, we cannot have it. And language, we must understand, is now also power. And that's why the smaller languages are dying down. If you look at some dialects, India is losing a lot of dialects because of this, because people are moving to cities, they have to converse in the languages of those cities, and that's why it's dying out. In Bombay, which is now 1/3, comprises of people who are migrants, mostly from Bihar and Eastern UP. So in Bombay, if you get into a taxi cab, if you know Hindi, or if you know Bhojpuri, much better, you'll get along well if you knew Marathi. Because languages has also become part of our job profiles. You must have noticed that in our video, there was a if you noticed or not, I don't know, how many of you noticed in which language the video was in? Hindi, yeah. But everything which was written was in English. Because we want to reach out to as many people as possible. And Indians can read English, which all my student friends would know very well, but when it comes to speaking English and understanding English, they have a problem. Though they all follow Dua Lipa and Justin Bieber and all that, the songs are okay. So you have to come up with things like that. And language is very important. Even on social media, it's much more important. I just realized that Twitter has disabled my Hindi keyboard, and I'm going to write to them about it. Because there are times when you cannot express yourself in English. Your repository of expression, kahawat, your idioms, they don't sound the same in another language. There's a saying in Hindi, neki kar kuएं में डाल. If you say it, you throw your good deed in a well, it won't get you. So we need to understand that also, that the information, the access to information should be in local language, which is very important. Instead of having this whole monolith in one language, it will just not work. And technology is going to help us in that. So most of the issues I was talking about here. Another big issue which we are going to face in India in the coming days is misuse of the information you are getting of people who are on technological platforms. Data privacy issue comes up. We are very confused and ambivalent when it comes to data privacy laws in India. So if a person goes to buy a car online or apply for a driving license online, which is a government thing, We'll start getting advertisements from car makers very soon. The minute you apply for a driving license, people say, oh, this guy is the driver. That's very important, because the government already has 1.2 billion people's data already with it. And most of the agencies which are working on this are not Indian agencies. We don't own the cloud. The cloud is somewhere outside. I talked to the current Home Minister once, Mr. Rajnath Singh, and I asked him that, he said, tell me 2 things we can do to improve things. I said, we must have a task force on cyber security. And this was a few years back. And he said, but we don't own the servers. How can we have that? China has done it very successfully. They have stonewalled, there's a wall of China around Chinese apps and Chinese work and the Chinese data infrastructure. We can't do it, so we have to work with these people. But we don't know whether the data you are putting in when you download an app from the government is the property of the government of India in Indian borders, but outside Indian borders, we don't know whether it's the property of the company which is running that cloud service. It's very important. And in coming days, we have to deal with this situation as more and more we get integrated in internationally, globalization, all that. And another fear of mine is that the biggest threat to information dissemination is nationalism. On one hand, we are talking about connecting to the world. On one hand, we want information of what is the weather like right now in Rio de Janeiro. If you're traveling to some place, you'd like to know what's happening in Nepal right now. So on one hand, we want the borders to be broken down, and on the other, when we start talking about nationalism, we want those borders to come up, which is terrible. And this talk of nationalism goes against access to information and language. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pachauri, for that excellent opening address. Before we move on to our second speaker, just a quick word about the format. We are going to have one group of 3 speakers. Mr. Pachauri was the first, after which we will have a 20-minute Q&A with these 3 speakers. We then break for tea and come back. We have a second group of 3 speakers, followed by a 20-minute Q&A with those speakers, right? So, as our speakers come and deliver their addresses, we would like you to keep any questions you might have in mind, which you can then actually ask them directly during the Q&A, right? So it's important that you make a mental note of certain points you want to raise, write it down ideally, and then we can take them up during the 20-minute Q&A sessions. Right. Our second speaker today, also from India, is Professor Uday Narayan Singh, who is presently the Dean of the Faculty of Arts and Humanities and Chair of the Amity Center for Linguistic Studies at Amity University, Haryana. Professor Singh is also an eminent poet, linguist, essayist, and translation theorist. His talk will address, in part, the importance of promoting multilingualism and linguistic diversity in cyberspace. Professor Singh. Shall I just bring your presentation? Yeah. That one, okay. And you can use this from there. Yeah. So we give you that. Just enlarge this.
See, yes.
Yep. Would you like to use that here?
No.
You want to speak from here? You can use that from there actually.
It's all right.
Okay.
Thank you. My talk is going to be mostly on languages, with which Pachauri ended his presentation. Now we know that India speaks in many voices, many languages. And we also know that it's a home for many beliefs, many thoughts, many practices. But communication has not really broken down in India, which is a difficult thing for many people to understand. Why did it happen like that? When you have so many languages, why is it not that communication is breaking down frequently? Now, we also know that our translations and our retellings allowed us to travel throughout our history, between texts, between cultures, communities, between time and space. Now, I begin with a very interesting observation which was made by Sandy Sundaram in Times of India portal in 2016, and I quote from her: "Father was posted in the true Telugu districts. It was but natural that we siblings spoke in purest of Telugu. Grandma, being a true Tamilian, made sure we also spoke Tamil, and tutors gave us the basics of English. Mother, being a very wise lady, engaged a Hindi tutor. To complicate matters, father went to Calicut and Mangalore, making us reasonably proficient in Kannada and Malayalam. This multilingual upbringing can be a boon and a curse." Now let me present you the total Indian scene at this point of time. We know that in 1901, between 1903 and 1929, when Linguistic Survey of India was done by George Abraham Grierson, who was originally a district magistrate, but basically an Irish linguist posted in India, we had a number, but the number was 179 languages, 544 dialects. The problem with Grierson, as you know, was that he was not allowed to go into the Mysore province, he was not allowed to go into the Nizam ruled area, not even in the northeast. So this is not really a true number, but it's had some number. In 1951, we found 14 languages in the 8th schedule, 23 major tribal languages, 24 other minority languages, all of them spoken by more than 1 lakh, and 722 smaller languages. For the first time in 1961-71 census, we got to know of a bigger number, 1652 mother tongues in India and 193 classified languages. If you're asking today government would say that we have 1576 rationalized mother tongues and 1796 other mother tongues. Now, this is difficult for those who don't know what this actually is. Basically, the rationalized mother tongues are those which you get to, with the labels which you get to see year after year, decades after decade in every census. So it is a verified kind of thing, verified language labels. So major languages are 122. Now this number changes. Of course, if you are asking somebody like Anthropological Survey of India, they will say its number is 325. And if you're asking ethnologue, they'll say number is 415. So that number may change. And we have, of course, a lot of scripts, 11 scripts, which are major scripts, and 53 other scripts. So roughly about 64 writing systems in India. This is the total scenario. Now, if you look at this situation, every time a new element was introduced in India, if you look at our history, we find that there is a kind of initial clash, but finally they settle down, they very easily mix with each other, and the communities make some kind of compromises. There's a compromise in language, there's a compromise in culture, in food habits and everything else. And this dialectics of clash and integration and conflict, this keeps on happening. It's a different matter that the government has made a lot of effort constitutionally, institutionally, to see that many of these smaller languages, smaller groups, communities, they also have the access, they also have right in the way the major languages, major communities have. And I've given you a few articles which I don't want to read out. You can easily search out, Google them, and find out the details. But then different speech communities also face and perceive certain barriers. Now, what are those barriers? Now, I talk about four kinds of barriers. Bunch of geographical barriers, of course, there are mountains, bodies, waters. Oh, no, we don't know. It's a huge country, and if you look at the from the north to south, a lot of people have no idea what exactly the other space is like, unless you reach that particular space. Political barriers, there are districts, administrative, state, economic, because there are languages which are smaller languages, endangerment, they're facing endangerment in Bengal, but they are doing very well in Sikkim. This is possible. So therefore, state-wise, you have a different kind of fate for each of these languages. Then there are social barriers like caste, class, rank, etc. Now, geographically, we know that most of our Aryan languages, Indo-Aryan languages, are in the northern area, and Dravidian languages in the southern area, and the Tibeto-Burman languages are in the northeastern area. So, geographical distribution is fine. But there's a fourth barrier, which is information barrier. And there are a lot of people who raise this issue of the hegemony that we have of few major languages. How does it work well? Does it at all work well in a network society such as India? And Kenneth Kensington is asking this question, whether these rich multiple cultures of India can survive the information age. This is the main question he is raising. And there is no doubt that many of the efforts which have been made by different sectors, whether social community groups like Wikipedia, networking sites such as Facebook, Twitter, they've changed our daily life. The communication flow and the information flow has been much vigorous. We know that initially there was a lot of struggle when World Wide Web started and management diversification became an issue. Now that ICANN is managing the entire scenario, and now that some of us are actually working on bringing in Indian scripts on the net as domain names, particularly if you look at the effort of the NBGP, Neo-Brahmi Generation Panel, for the last 3-4 years we have been working on that, and we have been able to solve the issue of 9 different writing systems to bring them up on the net, and it's going through processes. There is manifold attempts that people are making. So therefore we hope that many of these Indian languages will be really entering into the web in a very large way. At this point of time, what we know is that there's a Google KPMG report which says by 2021, content consumption in Hindi will surpass the consumption in English. Now, this is something which many of us perhaps didn't know, that during the last few years, between 2011 and 2019, there have been overflow of many of these social networking sites where Indian languages, content, and Indian scripts are entering in a very big way. So much so that by 2021, it's projected that the Indian language, local language content will be 536 million users. In comparison to the English language users, which will be much smaller, because most people who know English are already there on the net. No new persons really are getting into that. So internet user base, if you can look at this site, which shows very clearly that 9 out of every 10 new entrants to internet are coming into local languages. So that is something which is giving us a lot of hope and a lot of fear as well. Because then you do need a lot of technologies in local languages. You do need a lot of tools in local languages. You need a lot of contents to come up in local languages. Where will they come from? So this is one question that is important. And also you need to know that many of these access to information, many of the information services must provide information in these local languages. Now, if you look at this current situation, you would find that the vernacular languages are swelling in a large way. And the significance is also due to the fact that smartphones are becoming cheaper, data plans are becoming much easier. There is a rise in PQLI, Physical Quality of Life Index, HDI index. And 90% of this information is not really coming through laptop. It's mostly through the mobile phone because people do not necessarily can afford to have a laptop. Now, the interesting point is of the 22 languages in the constitution, there is a three-way classification. There are top 8. These top 8 are Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, Kannada, these 4 southern Indian languages. Then you have Hindi, Marathi, Bengali. These languages, 7 or 8 languages, they really occupy the maximum local language content space. And there's a middle rung languages, and then there are last 8 languages. Now, even within the constitutional recognized languages, the last 8 are really struggling. The Bodo, the Santali, the Konkani, the Maithili, they are really struggling. Although the situation is changing dramatically because the maximum number of new internet users are coming from Bihar. And a large number of them are coming from Maithili. So if you look at the Maithili content on Facebook today, Twitter, Facebook today, you find a huge number. And I'm an author in Maithili and Bangla both, so I notice the difference in the last few years. There's a tremendous difference, and that is something which is interesting. That a lot of people think, 68% of them think that Indian language content is more reliable because we have just now heard about reliability of the content, the fake news and all. They think that if it's something in the Indian language is coming through that, it's coming from heart, it's coming from truth, and it's perhaps more reliable. So this is something which is interesting. And 88% of them, they respond much better if there's an advertisement in local language. So this is the total statistics, but the challenges are tremendous. Now that we are working on so many Indian scripts, we know the challenges. If you look at the writing systems in India, some of them are really going left to right, some of them are top to bottom. Look at this complication of our script system here. And if you look at this complication, it's not just the Devanagari, Nagari-based scripts or Brahmi-based scripts. Apart from the Brahmi scripts, you have this complication also in Naskha and Nastaliq. So this is one challenge that we have to overcome. For greater access to cyberspace, there are some other challenges. We need to really have a reliable writing system and Unicode adaptability to this. Many of us, we don't know that there's a Lepcha script in which publications happen. There are dictionaries, there are grammars. There are also scripts which are much more remote, like Monpa, for instance. And if you look at last 600 years, Monpas have been really preserving their manuscripts and ancient knowledge system in Arunachal Pradesh, in a remote area in Arunachal Pradesh, and we haven't done much about that. Since, as the former director of the Central Institute of Indian Languages, I had so many requests from so many communities coming up to say that, sir, can you help us in taking us to Unicode, onto the Unicode. So this is one big challenge. Secondly, even for those scripts which are already available, which are used, in which huge number of books are printed. We know that roughly about 4,000 newspapers are published every year in 101 languages in India. So it's a big scenario actually, big thing. But we need to simplify our spelling rules, we need to simplify our style manuals, straighten our style manuals. And the key players in this, the content creators, developers, enablers, access providers, they have to play a very major role in that. The text normalization, text editing, text sorting softwares are needed. The e-lexicon, thesauri must be used, must be developed in a very large way. This is another kind of challenge for that. The third challenge is something which Pachauri has reminded us in this talk about the language endangerment. Those of us, 30 of us, as you know, I'm one of those 30 people who created the World Atlas for Endangered Languages. Now in that, when I was looking at all the 7 South Asian countries, we found that India perhaps was the biggest offender. 196 languages in India are facing threat of extinction to different degrees. And this in spite of our very liberal attitude. And if you look at the map of India, you know where the endangered languages are lying. So in the northeast, they are really dying. those in some areas of Orissa, Bengal, Sikkim, you can see in Assam, that area, a lot of people have problem. Then there are people who have problem in Araku Valley and also in down in Nilgiris areas in particular, Tora, Kota, Karwa, Badaga. A lot of them are facing threat of extinction. So there are these are very difficult situations, and we need to do something about them. As the former Secretary General of UNESCO had stated, there is no scope for complacency in particularly protecting and nurturing endangered languages. Speakers of this large number of smaller languages, they seem to be like a caged bird. They are waiting for access to information. They are waiting for all the facilities which the majority language users have. So we are plural, we have pluralistic policies, all right, but we need to do much better to provide access to information to many of our helpless brethren. Thank you very much.
Sí. We call as
And in Delhi, we have a very concentrated Bengali area called Chittaranjan Das Avenue. And Mr. Pajori asked me whether I traveled there. I did not, because I had traveled in Bangladesh at several mandap there. It is always nice to come to the UNESCO program, and UNESCO as an organization to kept the heritage, culture, language. It's a unique organization I have seen. And when I was the jury board for 3 years and chaired for 1 year, I see how practically this organization helped the good journalism around the globe. And we had to practically fight around the globe to choose the best journalist for the award. Well, RTI, just Right to Information in Bangladesh, just celebrated its 10th years a few months back. And Bangladesh is traditionally is part of India, part of other South Asian nations where British practically controlled over secretive laws. Perhaps the young boys will be surprised to know that before the Right to Information Act, the information of this area was practically controlled by a law called the Official Secrets Act, which was enacted in 1923. In Bangladesh, the Right to Information Act was practically inspired by the Indian activism. And this activism came from the non-governmental organization, firstly. Traditionally, journalist community have a different demand called the access to information, not the right to information. We practically fought for long decades for access to information, and government has their official secrets acts. There are three groups mainly. One, government, restrictive laws, traditional secretives culture. One, national or non-governmental organization, right to information, and we, the journalist community, have the demand for the access to information. So when the India successfully done that RTI, that practically inspired us. Several organizations from India came to us and discussed with us. Then we talked, these three groups come together, and finally we were able to come to form the RTI. And Article 19 of Bangladesh, Article 39 of the Constitution of Bangladesh practically guaranteed freedom of expression, freedom of thoughts and conscience. One of our senior journalists, he used to say that, well, according to the Constitution, we have right to freedom of expression, but freedom after expression, what happened, nobody knows. So that's the major problem. That was the major problem, otherwise we are very happy. So that's why you need something, access to information or right to information. And successfully, we all these three groups came together, and finally we make a draft and discuss lot of time. And interestingly, that time Bangladesh was run by a non-elected, army-backed government. And sometimes it is very difficult to handle with the democratic government, maybe. And that as it was a non-elected, army-backed government, we were managed to convince them that is the good law. And in 2008, the non-elected army-backed government discussed with us, and they make an ordinance, not law, because they don't have parliament, so they can't make a law. And interestingly, the subsequent elected government under this Prime Minister, present Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, we also, this two group, able to successfully convince her and her government that this is a good law, and that practically high-tier government and facelift of the country around the globe. And finally, on 2009, the law has been enacted. And on 2009 March, the law has been enacted in the Parliament. And 2009 July, the Information Commission was formed. And we achieved another thing, that the three-member Information Commission, there should be one person for the women. One woman should be there. So that is also another achievement, because in a male-driven society in our country, it's very tough to get the higher position for the women. So we got it there. So there is a huge debate in a sense that in the draft law, the exemption list was so high that we, as a journalist, practically did not agree with them. And finally, that has been cut short. But government was finally said that, well, there are 8 government organizations will not disseminate the information. All the government intelligence agency, police agency, army, security, they will not practically deliver the information. Then we come to a debate that if this organization cannot give the information, then it is nothing benefiting for the media. That there is a huge debate. Fortunately, we do have some good parliamentarians with us. And then we come to a conclusion that, well, normally this information of these agencies is classified, so they will not deliver it. But if any of their activity is linked with the corruption or the human rights violation, must be given to the media journalists. So that was practically an arrangement with the government finally to us. And last 10 years, it took a long time just to convince to the common people that this law, not only for the journalists, it is for the common people. And first barrier was to appoint the designated officer. In every section of the public sector must have one designated officer who will deliver the information. It took almost these 10 years to convince the government that in every section, and typically the hierarchy of the government officials said, why you need an officer sitting idly and getting this letter from somebody and giving the information? Nothing practically worth it. So now finally I can say you that the statistics in my hand, last 10 years, we have now almost 41,293 designated officer was appointed by the public sector. Almost 83% was covered. And the non-governmental sector, who are much more vocal than that of public sector, they are now a bit conservative. They are practically not try to appoint a designated officer. They are trying to control their information on their own way. So already when the government designated officer was 41,083.29%, the non-governmental sector come with only 16%, 600, 900. So this is now a new challenge, is that those who are vocal for this law, but in practicality, in reality, they are not willing to do those things. This is the part of the culture. I am not blaming any organization, but this is the part of the culture. And last 10 years, the statistics show that the Information Commission got almost 100,000 applications from the common people to get the information. Out of that, only very few percentage, 3,490 application was denied, and more than 1,000 was in appeal. And significantly, what is frustrating, that only 21% case come from the media. So that is still today the media in our country thought that, well, they are very happy with this thing. They do not need any law to furnish their professional activity. But now, because of the public awareness campaign of the Information Commission, we are able to include the national level journalists and the local language journalists for the training purposes, that, well, if you want to do a very good investigative report, you need to use this law. There is one clause in this law which practically makes frustration for the journalists, that Information Commission will need minimum 48 hours to deliver information to the journalist. But journalists said, well, I want to get information. Why man made a call and give me the information? I can't wait for 48 hours. So that is the dilemma, whether the Information Commission, it depends on the officer practically. If the officer is very friendly, then they can get the information through email, through telephone. But if the official still inherit the traditional bureaucratic attitude, they take the time, killing the time. So that is the fight still going on in dilemma with the journalist community. The another big challenge is that we do have the government law, we do have the designated officer, but we don't have a very scientific database. If you go to especially two sensitive area, one is revenue sector, income tax sector, another is land sector. These two are the most significant area where most the corruption, most intransparent things are happening. So journalists always want to get the information in this sector, but unfortunately, we do have very unfortunate situation in the database system. So that is one of the major barrier to get the information in the media. Very recently, with some of the blessings of the UNESCO, we try to, as our former two colleagues said, that language are dying, print media is dying, and journalism also dying. The quality of journalism is doing very downtrend. So we need to save this, and this is not my telling. Perhaps the student of journalism, you can go to the Reuters Institute website and just put 3 words: bias, bullshit, lie. And that is the headline of the Reuters survey report. And that was not from India, Bangladesh or Maldives. That 3-year survey they done in the European country that includes the United States and the UK. And they went through a survey that whether the common people trust the media. And believe me, and you can go and check the internet online. The Reuters Institute said that 63% of the respondents said that they don't believe on media. Because they said that the media either bias or bullshit or lie. So this is the scenario in the developed country. And after 1 year, the Reuters Institute thought that, well, people don't have trust on the media, they might have trust on the journalist. So they made another survey whether they personally trust the journalist. And the report said, no, we don't trust the journalist. Why? They are either stupid, they are either bribed, or they make the fake news. So that is the scenario. And when the developed country, the trendsetter have this sort of scenario, we are the followers have the same. So Bangladesh is not an isolated island, so we have the same problems. We started a good journalism campaign, and we somehow tried to convince to the owner of the media that, well, if you have the good journalism, the good business too. Ultimately, at the end of the day, people trust the good journalists, people trust the good media house. 2 years back, perhaps, I was the member of the Press Council of Bangladesh. We traveled to Delhi, and one very senior editor of Press Council member, he said that the infiltration of the social media, he does not have any belief on the social media. He said that this social media, nor it is social, nor it is media, neither is the media. And because of the content, as my two senior colleagues said, that without having good content, without having good presentation, only the use of the technology cannot save journalism. So at the end of the day, we need the good content. And good content comes from the good data, good information. Yeah. So this is the dilemma is going on. The social media, the strong presence of the social media, the very strong presence of the government restrictive laws still. As I mentioned, that our Article 39 says that freedom of thought and freedom of conscience is free, but there are almost 12 other laws which practically obstruct us not to express freely. Perhaps you know that we had a very black law called the ICT Act in the name of control the information technology. They have the 57 that if any police officer, if any police sub-inspector level police officer just thought that your smartphone might use against the country or the national security, so-called national interest and national security, he can pick it up and he can put you behind the bar at 6 months non-bailable section. That's Article 57 of the ICT Act. We, especially the journalist community, was practically fight on that, and finally that has been changed. But now the digital security law has been there, and that was not directly like the Article 57 of the ICT Act, but all the components of the ICT Act is practically segregated in different parts of the Digital Security Act. We do have in Bangladesh very vibrant private sector television, broadcast media, but unfortunately still we don't have any broadcast law. When the A government in power, they give the license for the A. When B government in power, they give the license for the B. It's a political choice. So we have practically major problem that we have very traditional law. Through the right to information law, we are practically coming out from the darkness of this traditional law. That is a very good positive thing. We have the new law on which practically control the social media and internet media. Very restrictive segment was there. And we do have no law, but media is there. So we have the traditional law, we have the new law, we have no law. So that is a very bizarre situation in the country. And we are working on that. And now if we again go back to the RTI, the major challenges I mentioned about the storage of database, that is the major problem. Another two problem is there, how to talk with, how to behave with the social media, internet media, young boys and girls. How the speed of the social media, the speed of the internet is not same linked with the speed of the information commission. So the speed should be come to a balanced level. Another thing is to get the information through online. So there is no clause in the laws that a person, if put any application to online, get the information to there. So you need to go there through the formatted form, and then you submit it there, and then you get to the printed form as the information. So I think right to information is one, almost 130 countries around the globe may have this sort of law. And Sri Lanka might be the latest one in this area. This is very, very progressive law. And India made almost 11 amendments from their first or second year. Still, we do not have any amendment in Bangladesh, but we think that because of the current situation, because of the present situation, we have to survive there. And as journalists, we are in good journalism campaign. And for the good journalism campaign, we need not only the journalists graduate from the university, we need practitioners who can practically use the tools they learn from the university. And tools, not only the technology, that is also the laws, that is all the support from the public and private sectors. And we need a very mindset changing in all levels. As I mentioned, that one, the non-governmental sector was very vocal to have this law as the parts of the human rights. But when the case came to bring their information in the light, they said, no, we have the other things to do. So I think these are the psychological war. But we are progressing, and information is like the flow of the river, flow of the water in the river. You cannot just make a dam and protect it. So in different way, if you protect the normal information, the gossip will be there. So whenever we had a discussion with the government, we said that, well, they said that, well, this is the misinformation. Misinformation, you need to fight misinformation with the proper information. If you do not give the proper information, so then misinformation will be sustained. So this is the war, this is the age of information. This is also the age of fake news too. So only the information, fact, that few months back when the conference was in UK, was held, that fact is fact. We, the journalists, never report A side or B side, we report the fact. If it goes in favor of B side, they said, well, the journalism is very good. But when it goes in support to the B side against the A side, those are the bad. So this is a love and hate relationship. And we as a professional journalist know that we have to survive with this. But if we are practically capable with the information, then we can make our own presentation style. Then we can use the latest technology, because ultimately the future lifeline to survive the journalism is to content diversity, presentation style, and use of the technology. Thank you very much.
All right, so we are going to move into a quick Q&A for our first set of three speakers, Mr. Pachauri, Professor Singh, and Mr. Bulbul. So may I request the three of you to come up to the stage and cluster around the central mic. And we request you to keep your questions brief, concise, to the point, right? And when you stand up, just let us know who you are. Introduce yourself briefly and let us know who you are addressing your question to. We will have a couple of hand mics being passed around. Can I have a show of hands about who wants to ask questions? Alright, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, around 5. Okay. We can take a couple more. We have approximately 10 minutes or so for this. Alright, so we start with Ayush with the first question. Right. Ayush, introduce yourself and who is your question for?
Hello, sir. My name is Ayush. I work closely with the armed forces of the country. So my question would be to Mr. Pichori. Sir, I noticed your comments on Kashmir, so I can't help but give a small rebuttal. With the greatest possible respect, sir, there are three facts that I would like to post in front of you. The first one is that the state of Jammu and Kashmir is an internal matter of India. That so any constitutional changes made in the state is to the government of India. That is what the Article 1 of Constitution of India says, and Article 1 of the Constitution of Jammu and Kashmir says. The second factor is that Pakistan is a factor in this situation. So the bilateral issue when it comes to the state of Jammu and Kashmir is the line of control and the cross-border terrorism that is being pushed into India. And the third factor is that indeed there is international attention towards the state of Jammu and Kashmir right now. What is that international attention focused on? It is on two things. First is the specter of nuclear war that the Prime Minister Imran Khan very, abashedly showcased at the United Nations forum itself. And the second is the fact that terror sanctuaries are present in Pakistan. So, sir, when it comes to, as you rightly said, there is a lockdown in terms of information. In that, I will again give you that what the Supreme Court of India has rightly said that you have to give the security forces and the government of India some time. Nothing can happen overnight. And the second, I would like to end with what our Foreign Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, has said that the responsibility of any government is to protect its citizens. And terrorism, sir, is the worst violation of human rights possible. So hence, if he had to choose his words between internet and the safety of his citizens, he would choose the safety first. And with that, whatever I've said about Kashmir and situation in Jammu and Kashmir has nothing to do with what you have said. All I have said about Jammu and Kashmir is that the people of the Jammu and Kashmir have a fundamental right, as we just said under UNESCO, to universal access to information. If there are 3,20,000 government resources online on which the students can study, people can find jobs, people can sell their goods. If all those resources are not available to the people of Jammu and Kashmir for 65 days, it's a by this information UNESCO mandate, which we have signed as a country, as a sovereign country, we are violating the human rights of Kashmiri people today. Nothing to take away from the valor of our forces, nothing to take away from the specter of violence. I've reported from Kashmir from 1989. And I know the situation very well. I've known this situation very well. I've reported on Kashmir from Geneva, from London, from Srinagar, from Washington, D.C., that the situation in Kashmir today is totally unprecedented, and we are not treating Kashmiri people today as full-fledged citizens of India, which is very unfortunate.
All right, our next question. Yes, the lady in the second row, please. Yeah, you have a mic. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hi, this is Vidya Venkat. I'm a PhD researcher from SOAS, University of London. And my research is on right to information in India. And I have a question for both Mr. Pachori and the speaker from Bangladesh, Mr. Bulbul. One is that in India right now, I mean, India has been an inspiration for other South Asian countries when it comes to right to information. And today we know that the government has amended the RTI law in India, and it has brought the appointment of information commissioners within the control of the central government. Earlier it was a parliamentary process. So there is this increasing, like Mr. Pachori said, on one hand, government says that we want to improve access to information, but there's also this silent attack on access to information on institutions that function in order to enable access to information. So I would be interested to know from Mr. Pachori and also Mr. Bulbul about how this sort of attack that comes from the powers that be, like denying information. Today, there are more than 30,000 information appeals pending before the Central Information Commission. And that itself is a violation of the citizens' fundamental right to information. So, as journalists, do you use the RTI law? I'm interested in knowing that, and what has the experience been like, and how do we tackle this kind of attack on access to information?
So,
Thank you. You are rightly mentioned that we are inspired by the Indian laws, but don't tell this last one that the government try to change here. So that might go there, and our government might think from here. So please, still in our country, that the system is like that. The government, under the leadership of the highest judiciary, they formed a search committee and they interviewed the people, and that was the system. I don't think any threat to control the media, but yes, the mindset of the government sometimes we can't read. I don't think they will put their hands to the right to information area, but they have something in their mind, because we are practically working on the broadcast law, and under the draft of the broadcast law, we are the participating group there. And then we practically recommended to have a very strong independent commission who will issue the license, they will take care of everything. All the powers has been given, and after 3-6 months exercise, when the final draft was placed to the government and the final version came to us, and they said that, well, the government will form a very powerful commission, and the commission will do everything. Government will just wash their hand on this sector. This commission with the full authority, and they put just one line that if anybody offended by any decision taken by the commission, their appellate authority will be the information ministry, meaning come to the government again. So same. I just talked last night with one of my colleagues in the Delhi Press Club that when somebody said that one nation, one language, that might be very strongly protested by the civil society group here and not much shout. But when this type of philosophy, this type of things come in their mind, we need to read their theoretical thinking in their mind, in which political philosophy provoked them to have one language, one nation. We are very sensitive because Bangladesh is a country where we fight. Our first fight started with the Pakistani regime for the language, and Assam is the another instance. So I think in Bangladesh sequence, we are not very much afraid about Information Commission or right to information, because government is very much enjoying a very proud activity taken by the recent Prime Minister, and she is very convinced that she did a very good job, and we used to try to practically keep her in this good humor. But if the Indian does the thing, I don't know what will happen there. Thank you.
Right to information is a very progressive law, and we all welcomed when right to information came to India. To tell you the truth, a senior minister in Manmohan Singh government, before the right to information came, told me, "Sir, after this it will be very difficult to run the country." I can say it now. He was from Department of Personnel. And I said, "Why? Why do you want to hide things? I mean, the information about what the government is doing, unless it's of security nature, it's of importance to save people's life, why would you like to hide it? People vote, they choose the government does things on their behalf. Whatever the government is doing should be accessible to people." But lately what is happening, that the government is doing something which itself is not sure about whether it's for the good of the people. That is why right to information is being not curtailed but being withheld. As you said, 30,000 applications. If the Food Corporation of India is giving money to system infrastructure of banks, which is going to run the government, on going to help some banks, people need to know that the Food Corporation of India was meant for food security of the country, and it should be working for food security of the country, and why it is behaving like a commercial bank. So that kind of information, when the government itself doubtful of its functioning, then the right to information is curtailed. Now, right to information and your HDI, Human Development Index, are totally correlated, as we have discussed many times on UNESCO. The countries which are open, their governments are open, are very high on HDI. And the countries where there's no right to information and people don't have that information are very low on HDI scale. So we have to think about it, and I think personally as a journalist and as a citizen of the country, that the more information people have, it empowers them more and it empowers the country more. Thank you.
Okay, two questions from the front row. Dr. Rajiv Shukla, sir, and then Dr. Govind. And then we'll move to the other two there. Yes, three. Okay. Mr. Rajiv Shukla.
Yeah, I'm Rajiv Kumar Shukla. I'm Rajiv Kumar Shukla. I worked in All India Radio for more than 36 years. And I just would like to add that being a public service broadcaster, in All India Radio, the emphasis always was on broadcasting in as many languages as possible. So we broadcast in all the 22 languages which are in the 8th schedule, plus English, of course, and about 175, 176 dialects also. And the demands for more broadcast comes. We are a country of oral tradition and Shruti Parampara, as we call it. So coming from that background, now we have a very robust presence of private radio, more popular in the metropolitan centers. And of course, we now have the communities radio movement as well. So, Professor Uday Narayan Singh, your presentation was absolutely revealing as far as the language, the multilingualism in the country and where it is going, whether, it is picking up or it is being endangered. Of course, we all know that many languages are under the threat of extinction. So, the role of, besides other things, radio, in the context of the, because radio is a medium where the speakers come into picture, speakers and listeners. So the role of radio, have you done any studies or do you propose to do any studies? All India Radio, or of course, as I said, All India Radio is a name which came in 1936, but Akashvani is a mythological name. So basically we have this tradition. So radio and particularly community radio, because I believe that community radio movement, we all expected a lot more. Looking at the diversity in the country, we all thought that the community movement will be much more prevalent and vibrant and distributed. But as of now, the energy is there, but the results are not there to be seen. And I would also like Mr. Bulbul to comment on this from the Bangladesh perspective.
I haven't come across any study on this issue of how much of language penetration has happened vis-a-vis radio. Radio penetration, of course, is a very large penetration. But how much radio has impacted these languages, that has not been really established by anybody. Yeah, I know of the large number of varieties, speech varieties, which are being used by All India Radio, particularly in Krishi and various other agriculture and various other sectors.
In many dialects I know of Bundelkhand, Chhattisgarh, of course, so there the folk lore and the folk artists, they all became stars after the station started functioning in that.
True, that is true. What I'm saying is that the number of speech varieties, I won't call them dialects, number of speech varieties that we are talking about is in 3,000, range of 3,000. We have been using 175 in All India Radio. So I'm not sure those who are left behind, what their feeling is like and how much of radio penetration they have in their region, so that whether they will benefit or not. That's also very important. Yeah, so that I think is a community radio for last 10 or 15 years has been picking up quite large, and hopefully there would be some study which would be done in this area. But as of now, there has been no study as such.
Just add that there have been listeners, a very major cross-country listenership survey of community radio was done, but it really did not look into the language aspect. It was more about listening habits, times, prime time for community radio, what they listen to, how many people on a radio set in a village, that sort of thing. But it did not look at the language aspect really. So that remains a gap.
Yeah, we have done it. Our audience research has done it.
Okay, you've done that.
Language direct way also.
For community radio, it has not been done.
As you said, the number is too huge.
Yes.
And so we need to do more.
Thank you. The Bangladesh scenario is almost same. Still, the penetration of the radio is the highest among the all media, and the addition of the community radio is the new dimension. And almost 24 of the community radio is running over the country, and some of the community radio run their programs, if not full, some of the programs in local language, especially during the rainy season when the signals message should be there, when the other signals agriculture message should be there, and the community use the local language so that the common farmers, common people can get in touch with them. But I don't have any survey report in my hand, but traditionally, yes, radio have the good penetration. Perhaps you know that as you are working, Akashbani, Radio, Ceylon, these are the media which our forefathers and we also grown up with the Akashbani, Radio, Ceylons and other things. Thank you.
All right. Okay, Dr. Govind in the second row. And after this, up to 2 more questions, provided they're short and quick. Yes.
Thank you. My question is towards Mr. Pachori, and then another is for Mr. Singh. That you talked about the internet shutdowns in various parts of the country, and I also know there is a report which says India has the highest internet shutdowns last couple of years. So I just want to know, because it's basically connected with the law and order situation. Developmental aspect is all right, but the same access is misused by rumor mongers and other kind of elements in the society or in the country. So how to make a balance between the two kinds of situations where it is developmental tool as well as misusing the thing from the derogatory and the terrorism point of view. And another question to Mr. Singh, that I know that language domain names and other things are there. So where we stand in terms of the language translation, quick translation of the diaspora from one language to another, mainly in the Indian languages from English or any other global languages.
About internet shutdowns. Internet shutdowns are like, shutting down water supply to a whole town if 3 houses have reported that the water is bad and contaminated. You cannot do that. I've been in situations as in Prime Minister's office where we were told that there's a large scale problems and we must shut down Twitter and Facebook. And the first reaction of the people, the government, or the Home Ministry was that we should shut this down. And we came up with this thing that you cannot shut down the information to entire Bangalore, which is our hub of information, if 3 posts about violence against people from the northeast are creating problems. So this was the reasoning when the meeting came up, was given that you cannot shut down the water supply to the entire city if 3 houses have contaminated this thing. You quarantine those 3 houses, you find out. That's one. Second, if you shut down the information, as you are saying, that the people who are inimical to the society and law and order, if you shut down the information and internet, you also don't know what they are up to. 66% of the crime solved in Uttar Pradesh are because the police have the information from the cell phones of the criminals. So you use that against crime to have better law and order, the technology. The technology is not to blame. You can't shut down the technology. You use technology, you become better than the criminals. Otherwise, it's self-defeating. So that's my answer to this.
Involve the other stakeholders.
Involve the stakeholders, then you know actually what the criminals are up to. If you shut down information, and right now, if you shut down information in Jammu and Kashmir, you don't know what these groups are doing. They must be doing something.
Thank you.
Well, there are information available on the TDIL websites. If you look at the Technology Development in Indian Languages has a separate website on the DOE, you have very large number of projects which have been done on translation software and various other tools and technologies between and among Indian languages and between English and Indian languages. They are all available, but the quality that is expected, that is accuracy that is expected, is still not really up to the point. So if you say that my software achieves 90%, suppose Anusaraka software achieves 90% accuracy, which means that on every page, every 10th word is a mistake, which that can really create havoc. So that is a problem. So the level of accuracy has to be above 96, 97% to be able to reach that kind of accuracy. So that is still, people are working on that. But there are various groups which are working very closely on that issue.
Thank you.
All right. Two last questions, but very, very quickly, yeah? Short questions and... yes, all right, the mic.
Hello, my name is Yash. I'm from Amity. I'm having my journalism. My question goes to Mr. Pankaj. So what do you feel about political parties coming under the ambit of RTI Act? If yes, then what could be the role of journalists and media in that?
Political parties responding to RTI.
That's a very good question. Very good question. I cannot ask my government to be open to me and tell the government that I will not be open to you. If I'm not doing anything which is illegal, unethical, immoral, I'm open to everything. People keep asking me that how do you keep your Twitter account and all that. I launched the Twitter and Facebook and YouTube, all the accounts of Prime Minister's office. I think we have nothing to hide. We are going to put up everything which is going on there because we have taken all these decisions after deliberations according to the law of the country and constitutionally. So if I have nothing to hide, so why should the political parties should be scared of this? If you have nothing to hide, every individual is filing their returns to the income tax department, to the GST department, to all the departments in the country. Every company is doing it. So why the political parties should stay above of this? They should also do it. If they have taken X amount of money from one businessman, they should have enough courage of conviction to tell the people that we have taken so much money from XYZ. And so much money is gone for this and gone for that. RTI Act, I think, more information, the cure for misinformation is always more information.
Yeah. Okay, our last question, the gentleman there.
Hello to the guests on the panel. My name is Istiqlal Murad. I'm from Afghanistan and I'm doing software development. So I'm basically doing application development. And it was very interesting for me to know that Mr. Pichari and Mr. Bulbul both are working on different platforms. One is creating an app, Go News, that is completely internet based. Another one, Mr. Bulbul, who's working on mainstream media, television and satellite systems. So the question I want to ask, and it's directed to both of you, so you give me your views on that, is what do you think in the near future? Because many technologies came and went because they became obsolete. With the rise of the internet and application, people can view contents they like. They can give their reviews, they can give their comments on the news. And rather than TVs where they watch and it's a static information, whether you like it or you hate it, you have to watch that. So what do you think, the mainstream media will stick, or will Mr. Pichari win and the app application which are presenting news gonna stick? Thank you very much.
Well, this is a very common question we faced. So you see, if you go through the history, when there is no radio, only the print media was there. When the radio came in, everybody said, oh, now the people will not read the newspaper, everybody listened. So when the television came, said, oh, radio has gone. Now the age of television, now everybody can watch and can see and can listen there. And then when the internet came, I said, now everything gone, that this is the age of the internet. You see, that was a big debate. It's a big debate, but the media pundits come to a conclusion that media will sustain, whether it is social media or it is the traditional media. There are three major lifelines. One is the content diversity. If the traditional media, if all the television channels have the same talk show in the evening, one of my Pakistani journalist friends said that, well, India, Pakistan does not have any war, but if you just switch on after 8 p.m., you will see how the fight is going on. So it practically depends on the content diversity, whether it's the traditional media or the online media. If the internet is a very speedy tools, Facebook is a very speedy tools. It's not the news media, but they have the tools. But if they come with the bad content or the fake content, the technology might be very high, but because of the content, it will not sustain. So one, the content diversity. Another is the presentation style. If all the television channel, all the news presenters have the same style, why I watch the same thing in every channel? So there should be a difference. And finally is the use of the technology. So it is the age of the technology. You cannot practically go out of the technology. So, but if you have the technology, but fake content, that very old pattern of presentation, then technology will not help you. So this thing, especially the student of journalism, they need to know. I was in Communication University of China last month, and one young teacher, he said that in the first year class, said that, well, you are in my course, and what I will teach you in the coming 3 years, and when you go back to the profession, you will see that the syllabus I have to teach you might be obsolete. So you need to be prepared that the information is very fast, very quick. So you need to learn the fastness of the technology. So technology with good content, with good presentation, can help a journalist or a media to survive. As my senior colleague Mr. Shukla said, that once it was thought that national radio, public service broadcasting is the only source. Now the community radio. And now when the community radio came, they said that, well, community radio is for the community. So if I just go through the language of the national level might not help. So we bring the local language. So that is the thing. And in one of our North Bengal community radios said that most of the listener of our radio is the women. So our content should be designed for the women ones. So this should be researched, and that we should be on this effect. Thank you.
Very good answer.
What Dr. Bulbul said about media, that media will keep changing, but the earlier media will not die, ever. In last decade, news television in India, which was growing at one point of time when I was working in news television at 10%, 12% a year, is still growing. It's only 1% or 5%, but it's still growing. But digital platforms like mine, they are growing like 300%. So whenever something new will come, it will grow faster. I mean, last 2.5 years, our biggest learning has been that the app industry and news on app is becoming constricted, because people on their phone, they have Zomato, they have PayPal, they have Paytm, they have all these things. So there's very little space on your phone for apps. So from pull, it's now going to push, and that's why Google and Microsoft, everyone is getting into news, because they can push their news faster than anyone. And that's why all the social media people are getting, so that's been our learning. So we do that, that's why we launched a website. And we launched a website in English, then we've launched a website in Hindi, because you have to now push news to people instead of pulling, which happens in radio, because you have to go and tune in, and television, you have to tune in, you do that. So nothing is going to die. The human race's desire to get more information will never die out. That's one thing. It started from earlier days and to now. Human race will keep finding ways to new information platforms, and that will keep going on. The others will grow less, and the new ones will grow faster, but they will all grow together.
Okay. The gentleman there, here.
Thank you very much. My name is Mujib Rahman and I am a student in one of the universities in India. I want to mention Mr. Pachori for this question. How do the government of India makes sure that the necessary, reliable and exact information reaches up to public and in a small cities and towns in India? Thank you very much.
See, now we have a situation in India where the TikTok stars are getting Vidhan Sabha seats. In Haryana, I was told there's a TikTok star who's been given a ticket by the ruling party. Everyone knows that person. I don't know because I'm from old this thing. So, what the government of India can't do, some other platform will do. The government of India has Doordarshan, has All India Radio, has DAVP, has all kind of paraphernalia. Once as media advisor to the Prime Minister, I used to be in charge of all this and I didn't even know how many people are there. Doordarshan is the largest now because the BBC has scaled down. Now Doordarshan is the largest broadcaster in the world. It has more than 50,000 people. It's like a behemoth. And there's enough for government of India to use Doordarshan and reach out to everyone. But the government in India now has, as I just said some time ago, has also got onto social media platforms. Every government department has its own handle. And my friend here from Armed Forces, he would know that even the Armed Forces, it was very difficult for me to convince the Armed Forces to go on Twitter just 6 years ago. I pushed the PR, head of PR in DAVP, and I said if the Armed Forces are not doing it because it's very secretive, the DAVP for Armed Forces should have a Twitter account, so at least people get to know what is happening where. And the rumors are called. So the government of India has a very large presence. The Prime Minister himself has 200 million followers. He is the largest in the world. So it has everything. Now Prime Minister is also on Weibo. So not only Indian citizens, they also have Chinese citizen, where information is going. And you are from Afghanistan, I think. Yes, yes. I follow Tolo News. Because I think that's one of the very, reliable news thing. We are doing a story on pomegranate, the politics of pomegranate. Because Pakistanis keep increasing tariff on pomegranates. And the farmers in Kandahar, they are getting affected by it. It's an important story for that region, for the agricultural producer. Everyone wants people in Afghanistan to grow things and they want to buy it. And that I got from Tolo News. Pahaj News is another website in Afghanistan. So the government of India and every other government had lots of things. The thing is how you use it. And that's more important. The content of government outreach is much more important than its scale and its engagement. That's the most important thing. Are you responsive? If a government is not responsive, people will stop following its information. The government should also be responsive. If someone asks a query, someone asks a question, we should have the answers to that. And all the departments in the government, I kept telling them at that time, do that. And that's why I said, you go to our website, you'll find all these kind of stories which are coming actually from government sources only. We have decided that we'll quote only government of India. So we are not accused of being anti-national. So everything you put out, CSO, RBI, NSSO, every detail, State Bank of India, you use government sources and put the facts out because there are a lot of facts within the government which are available. I mean the CAG reports, no one
reports about CAG reports anymore. They come out every year. There's a whole huge stack of CAG reports every year. You just go, and the government of India itself is criticizing government of India. You can just put those CAG reports. I put one in every budget session. I have one reporter who's just doing CAG reports. This is the government's is saying about the government. So that kind of information, we need that kind of information, and that's why I say the more information there is in public domain, there are less rumors. No one is doubting your motives. And that's the best information scenario. That's the best access to information. There's more information, there's more empowerment.
All right. I think we'll have to close here. All right. Oh, yes, of course. You want to add to that, yeah.
To take it to the lighter side, Charles Hockett in 1960s talks about 14 different features of human language. And the most important feature, he says, is prevarication, telling lies. No other medium will allow you to tell lies. Birds cannot tell lies, dogs cannot tell lies, nobody can tell lies, bees cannot tell lies. So therefore, prevarication is the basis of all our creativity, including fake news, including all the fiction, all the films, all the drama that you do, all the poetry. So therefore, this is dialectics. This will stay. You have to know which one to believe and how much to take from there.
That's a very memorable takeaway. Thank you. All right. So thanks to our speakers once again. This was round one of the open talks. We're going to take a quick 15-minute tea break. All right. And in 15 minutes, we expect all of you to be back here. Our second round of the open talks will begin. Thank you.